They say that the deepest cuts come from the sharpest knives wielded by the gentlest hands. I never understood that until the day I watched my world collapse through the blue light of my phone screen, all because of someone who had looked me in the eyes 1,000 times and promised she'd never hurt me. I should have known better. Friendship, real friendship, is supposed to be a fortress built on trust. At least that's what I always believed. Alexis and I had been inseparable since freshman year of college, when we both showed up to the same party wearing identical black dresses and spent the entire night huddled in a corner, laughing about how we'd accidentally become twins. 10 years later, I still had the blurry selfie we took that night saved as her contact photo. "We're gonna be old ladies together someday," she'd say, usually after too many glasses of wine, her voice a comforting certainty in my life. "Even when we're wrinkled and can't remember our own names, I'll remember yours." I believed her. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was thinking that 10 years of friendship would be enough to protect me from the version of Alexis that existed when I wasn't looking. The version that apparently had no problem sliding into my boyfriend's DMs while simultaneously planning her wedding to Todd, a guy who worshipped the ground she walked on. The worst part? I wouldn't have even known if I hadn't forgotten my phone charger at her apartment after our monthly wine night. Such a small, stupid thing to change everything. It was a Friday in late September, and the afternoon light was casting long shadows across my living room floor as I frantically searched through my bag for my charger. My phone was already down to 12%, and I had an important client call in an hour. I needed that charger. "Damn it," I muttered, dumping the contents of my purse onto the coffee table. No charger. My mind flashed back to the previous night. I'd plugged it in behind Alexis's couch when my phone had died halfway through our third glass of wine and our passionate debate about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. I glanced at my watch. I had just enough time to swing by her place before my call. Alexis worked from home on Fridays, so she'd definitely be there. I grabbed my keys and headed out, the fall air crisp against my face as I walked the 6 blocks to her apartment building. The doorman waved me in with a familiar smile. I was there often enough that he no longer needed to call up for approval. When I knocked on her door, there was no answer. I frowned and checked my watch again. I knew she was home. Her Instagram story from an hour ago had shown her coffee mug on her kitchen counter with the caption, "WFH Life." I pulled out my nearly dead phone and called her. No answer. With a sigh, I reached into my bag for the spare key she'd given me for emergencies. This wasn't exactly an emergency, but I really needed that charger, and I'd be in and out in 30 seconds. The apartment was quiet when I entered, just the soft hum of the air conditioner breaking the silence. I headed straight for the living room, spotting my charger still plugged in behind the couch where I'd left it. "Got you," I whispered triumphantly, kneeling down to unplug it. That's when I heard it, the soft ping of a message notification coming from somewhere in the apartment. Alexis's phone. She must have forgotten it when she stepped out. I wouldn't have thought anything of it if I hadn't heard a second ping and then a third in quick succession. Something about the rhythm of those notifications caused a tiny flicker of unease to run through me. I stood up, charger in hand, ready to leave. But the phone pinged again, and this time I spotted it on the kitchen counter, screen lighting up with each new message. I should have left. I know that now. But something pulled me toward that phone like a magnet. Call it intuition or just morbid curiosity. The screen showed 4 new messages from a contact saved simply as M, and below them, visible without even unlocking the phone, were the words that would change everything. "Miss you already. Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." My heart stuttered in my chest. Alexis was engaged. Had been for 8 months. I'd helped Todd pick out the ring, a vintage oval diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. I'd been the one who held her while she cried happy tears after he proposed. This had to be a misunderstanding. With shaking fingers, I reached for her phone. I told myself I just wanted to see if it was a wrong number, or maybe a friend I didn't know about. The rationalization felt hollow even as I thought it. I knew her passcode, her birth month and day, same as it had been for years. The phone unlocked with a cheerful little chime that seemed obscenely bright in the quiet apartment. The messages were from Marcus. My Marcus? My boyfriend of 2 years. "You left your earring in my car. I'll keep it safe for next time. Still thinking about that thing you did? Damn. When can I see you again? Todd's away next weekend, right? Miss you already. Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." The phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the counter. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest, all the air rushing out of my lungs at once. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself, bile rising in my throat. I didn't want to believe it. There had to be another explanation. Maybe it wasn't my Marcus. Maybe it was some other Marcus that Alexis knew. But even as I desperately grasped for alternatives, my mind was putting the pieces together with brutal efficiency. Marcus canceling our plans last night because of a work emergency. Alexis texting me yesterday afternoon that she needed to rain check our regular Thursday wine night because she wasn't feeling well. The way Marcus had been oddly interested in my friendship with Alexis lately, asking casual questions about what we talked about when I'd seen her last. The strange distance I'd felt from Alexis over the past few months, subtle enough that I'd convinced myself I was imagining it. With trembling hands, I picked up the phone again. I needed to know how long, how deep this betrayal went. I scrolled up through their conversation history, each message like a knife twisting in my gut. It had been going on for 3 months. 3 months of lies, of them sneaking around behind both my and Todd's backs. There were date plans, explicit messages that made me physically recoil, inside jokes at my expense, and photos. God, there were photos. I couldn't breathe. The walls of the apartment seemed to close in around me, suffocating in their familiarity. How many nights had I spent here, confiding in Alexis about my relationship with Marcus, my insecurities, my hopes for our future together? How many times had she hugged me and offered advice, all while she was sleeping with him behind my back? My phone buzzed in my pocket, a final warning that it was about to die. The client call. I had completely forgotten. Mechanically, I put Alexis's phone back exactly where I'd found it, grabbed my charger, and left the apartment, locking the door behind me. I moved like a robot, my body functioning on autopilot while my mind reeled. I canceled the client call from the Uber home, making up some excuse about a family emergency. It wasn't entirely a lie. This felt like a death, the death of my relationship, my best friendship, and my trust all at once. Back in my apartment, I plugged in my phone and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. I should cry, I thought distantly. That's what people do when their world falls apart. But no tears would come. Just a hollow, aching void where my heart should be, and a strange, icy calm settling over me. I opened my texts with Marcus and typed, "We need to talk. Tonight." His response was immediate. "Everything okay, babe? I'll come over after work." Babe. The casual endearment made my stomach turn. I wondered if he called Alexis the same thing. The hours until he arrived passed in a blur. I showered, scrubbing my skin until it was raw, as if I could wash away the betrayal. I changed my sheets, not wanting to sleep in the bed where he had lied beside me, probably thinking of her. I paced my apartment, rehearsing what I would say, how I would confront him. By the time his familiar knock came at my door, the shock had hardened into something darker, colder, more focused. I opened the door to find him smiling, a bag of takeout from my favorite Thai place in one hand, a bottle of wine in the other. "Thought you might need comfort food," he said, leaning in to kiss me. I turned my face away, his lips grazing my cheek instead of my mouth. A flicker of confusion crossed his face as he moved past me into the apartment. "Rough day?" he asked, setting the food and wine on the kitchen counter. "You could say that," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "I found out something interesting today." He was pulling plates from the cabinet, his back to me. "Yeah? What's that?" "I know about you and Alexis." The plate in his hand froze midway to the counter. For a second that seemed to stretch into eternity, he didn't move, didn't breathe. Then his shoulders sagged, just slightly, before he carefully set the plate down and turned to face me. "Emily, How long?" I interrupted, not interested in whatever excuse he was about to manufacture. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. Now it just looked calculated, buying time to formulate a lie. "It's not what you think?" he started, his eyes not quite meeting mine. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that surprised even me. "Really? Because what I think is that you've been fucking my best friend behind my back for 3 months while she's engaged to someone else. Please tell me how that's not what I think." His face paled. "How did you—" "Does it matter?" I asked coldly. "I saw your texts." "All of them." He took a step toward me, hands outstretched in a placating gesture. "Emily, please. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or burning dinner, Marcus. What you did was a choice. A choice you made over and over again for 3 months. I never meant to hurt you," he said, and the utter banality of the excuse made something snap inside me. "Get out," I whispered. Emily, please, can we just talk about this? I love you, not her. It was just, get out! I screamed, my voice shattering the careful control I'd been maintaining. Get out of my apartment, get out of my life. We're done. We were done the moment you decided to sleep with my best friend. He stared at me for a long moment, seeming to weigh his options. Then, without another word, he grabbed his jacket and left, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded unnervingly final. Alone in my apartment, I finally allowed myself to break. I sank to the kitchen floor and sobbed until my throat was raw and my eyes burned. I cried for the relationship I thought I had, for the friendship I had trusted in completely, for the future I had foolishly been planning. When the tears finally subsided, leaving me empty and exhausted, I reached for my phone. I needed to talk to someone, but the person I would normally call in a crisis was Alexis. The irony was so bitter I almost started laughing. I scrolled through my contacts, wondering who I could trust with this. But a new thought was taking shape in my mind, pushing through the fog of grief with startling clarity. Why should I be the only one suffering? Why should they get to destroy my world and walk away unscathed? Why should Todd continue planning his wedding to a woman who was cheating on him with my boyfriend? I put my phone down, a cold determination replacing the hollow ache in my chest. I wasn't going to call anyone. Not yet. First, I needed to plan. The next week passed in a surreal haze. I went through the motions of my life, went to work at the graphic design firm where I was a junior partner, responded to emails, attended meetings, all while carrying the weight of betrayal like a stone in my chest. Marcus called and texted constantly for the first 3 days. I blocked his number on the 4th. Alexis reached out too, her messages casual and normal, as if she hadn't destroyed our friendship. Wine night this Thursday? I have gossip! OMG, did you see what Jessica posted on Instagram? Those bangs are a crime. Hey, everything okay? Haven't heard from you in a few days. Each message made my skin crawl. I responded vaguely, making excuses about being swamped with work. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not until I decided exactly how I wanted this to play out. Because that's what had been crystallizing in my mind over these painful days. This wasn't going to be a simple confrontation. I wasn't just going to scream at her and walk away. The cold, rational part of my brain that had taken over wanted something more. I wanted her to feel what I felt. I wanted her to lose what she valued most, the way I had. I wanted her perfect life to crumble around her, just as mine had, and I knew exactly how to make that happen. The answer had been there all along, in the title of the story I was living through. Vegas. 6 months ago, Alexis and I had gone to Las Vegas for a girls' weekend that had turned into 4 days of excess, bad decisions, and secrets that we'd sworn would stay between us. At least that's what she thought. What Alexis didn't know was that I had kept everything. Every text, every photo, every drunken voice memo from that trip. Not because I'd planned to use them against her, but because they were memories of what I'd thought was a perfect friendship. Now they would serve a different purpose. On the 8th day after discovering the affair, I finally responded to one of Alexis's increasingly concerned messages. Sorry, been crazy busy. Drinks tomorrow night at my place? I need to talk to you about something. Her response came almost immediately. Yes! Thank God you're alive! I was about to send a search party. 7 p.m. work? Perfect, I replied, a small, cold smile forming on my lips. That night, I went through the Vegas evidence. The texts between us planning which clubs to hit and which guys to avoid. The photos of her dancing on tables, kissing strangers, doing shots with bachelor parties. The voice memo where she drunkenly confessed that she sometimes wondered if she was making a mistake getting married, that she felt trapped by Todd's devotion. And the crown jewel, the text conversation where she detailed exactly what she'd done with that bartender from the Bellagio while Todd was at home planning a surprise for their anniversary. It doesn't count if it's in Vegas, right? She'd texted me afterward. What happens there stays there. Take this to my grave, swear to God. I had responded with the crossed heart emoji and secrets safe with me, babe. Vegas doesn't exist in real life. Little did she know that Vegas was about to become very, very real. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I meticulously organized everything into a sequence, a narrative that would leave no room for explanation or excuse. I created screenshots, backed everything up to the cloud, and rehearsed what I would say to her face to face. Because that was important to me. I wanted to see her face when she realized what was coming. I wanted to watch the same horrified understanding dawn in her eyes that had crashed through me in her kitchen a week ago. When she arrived the next evening, bottle of wine in hand and smile bright, I had to physically stop myself from slapping her. The ease with which she entered my home, the casual way she kicked off her shoes and headed for the couch, all of it so normal, as if she hadn't betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. "God, I've missed you," she said, plopping down and immediately pouring us both generous glasses of wine. "Work has been insane, and Todd is driving me crazy with wedding details. Who knew he'd have such strong opinions about centerpieces?" I managed a tight smile, taking the glass she offered but not drinking. "How's the wedding planning going otherwise?" She launched into a detailed breakdown of venues and flower arrangements and dress fittings, and I let her talk, studying her face. My once best friend, the person I'd trusted most in the world. Looking at her now, I searched for signs of the deception, some mark of betrayal that would have warned me if I'd been paying attention, but there was nothing. She was exactly the same Alexis I'd always known, except now I understood that this version of her had always been a performance. "Anyway," she said finally, taking a large sip of wine, "you said you needed to talk about something? Everything okay?" I set my untouched wine on the coffee table and met her eyes. "Marcus and I broke up." Her face arranged itself into a mask of concern so convincing that for a split second, I doubted what I knew. "Oh my God, Em. What happened? Are you okay?" "He was cheating on me," I said flatly, watching her face with clinical detachment. A flicker of something, fear, guilt, passed behind her eyes before she composed herself. "That bastard," she said, reaching for my hand. "I'm so sorry. Do you know who it was?" The audacity was breathtaking. I pulled my hand away from hers. "Yes," I said softly. "I know exactly who it was." She held my gaze for a moment before dropping her eyes to her wine glass. She started, her voice suddenly uncertain. "It's funny," I interrupted, "how well you think you know someone, how you can trust them completely, tell them everything, share your life with them, and never see that they're lying to your face." She was very still now, her knuckles white around the stem of her glass. "Emily, I was at your apartment last Friday," I continued, my voice eerily calm even to my own ears. "I forgot my charger there. Let myself in with the key you gave me. Remember that key? For emergencies, you said. Because you're the only person I trust enough to have access to my space." She set her glass down with a shaking hand, wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "I can explain," she whispered. "I saw the texts, Alexis. All of them. 3 months of you and Marcus going behind my back. 3 months of you looking me in the eye and pretending to be my friend while you were fucking my boyfriend." Tears filled her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen. We never meant for it to get this far." "But it did," I said coldly. "And you let it. You encouraged it. You planned it around Todd's schedule. You canceled plans with me to be with him. You actively, deliberately betrayed both me and your fiancé." "I'm so sorry," she said, tears now streaming down her face. "I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. It was the biggest mistake of my life. Please, Emily, you've been my best friend for 10 years. We can get past this." I laughed, and the sound was hollow and frightening. "Get past this." "There is no getting past this, Alexis. You destroyed everything we had. Friendship is built on trust, and I will never trust you again." She was fully crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Please, Emily. I'll do anything. I'll break it off with Marcus. It's already over, actually. I ended it last week. I'll postpone the wedding. I'll go to therapy. Anything. Please don't throw away 10 years over one terrible mistake." "One mistake?" "It wasn't one mistake. It was hundreds of decisions to betray me day after day for months." I stood up and walked to my desk, picking up my phone. "And it wasn't just Marcus." Confusion flickered across her tear-stained face. "What do you mean?" "Vegas," I said simply. The color drained from her face. "What?" "Our trip to Vegas 6 months ago. You remember that, don't you? The clubs, the drinking, the bartender from the Bellagio." Her eyes widened in horror. "Emily, you promised. You swore that stayed between us. Just like you swore you'd never betray me." I countered, my voice razor-sharp. "Funny how promises work." "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I held up my phone. "I still have everything, Alexis. Every text. Every photo. Every voice memo where you talked about having doubts about Todd, about feeling trapped. The detailed account of your night with the bartender that you texted me afterward. All of it." She stood up, swaying slightly. "You wouldn't—" "Why not? You didn't think twice about betraying me." "That's different," she said desperately. "I made a terrible mistake, but this would be deliberate. This would be you trying to hurt me." "Yes," I agreed. "It would be Todd doesn't deserve to be hurt like this, she pleaded. He didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I reminded her. And yet, here we are. She sank back onto the couch, her body seeming to fold in on itself. What do you want from me? I sat down across from her, maintaining a careful distance. I want you to understand what you've done. I want you to feel a fraction of the pain I felt when I saw those messages. I want you to face the consequences of your actions. By destroying my relationship? My future? She asked, voice breaking. Your relationship was already broken the moment you decided to cheat on Todd. I'm just making sure he has all the information before he commits his life to someone who doesn't respect him. She was quiet for a long moment, staring down at her hands. When? She finally asked. When what? When are you going to tell him? I leaned back in my chair. I haven't decided yet. Maybe tonight. Maybe next week. Maybe on your wedding day. That's the thing about betrayal, Alexis. You never see it coming. A sob escaped her. Please, Emily. I'm begging you. I'll tell Todd about Marcus myself. I'll come clean about everything. Just please don't send him those Vegas texts. Our engagement wouldn't survive that. Should it survive? I asked coldly. Should he marry someone who cheated on him multiple times? Who has doubts that she's buried so deep even her best friend couldn't see them until you drunkenly confessed in Vegas? People make mistakes, she whispered. I love Todd. I do. The thing with Marcus was it was stupid and selfish and terrible, but it wasn't about love. And Vegas was just one drunken night that I've regretted every day since. Not enough to tell him the truth, though, I pointed out. She didn't have an answer for that. I stood up. I think you should go now, Alexis. I've said what I needed to say. What are you going to do? She asked again, her voice small. I don't know yet, I replied honestly. But when I decide, you'll be the last to know. Just like I was the last to know about you and Marcus. She gathered her things slowly, moving like someone underwater. At the door, she turned back to me, eyes red-rimmed and pleading. I really am sorry, Emily. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I hate myself for what I did to you. I looked at her, this woman who had been my confidant, my support system, my chosen family for a decade, and felt nothing but a cold, distant pity. Goodbye, Alexis, I said, and closed the door. Alone in my apartment, I leaned against the door and exhaled slowly. The confrontation had gone exactly as I'd planned, but I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. Just a hollow emptiness and the crystallizing certainty that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I hadn't decided yet whether I would actually send those Vegas texts to Todd. Part of me wanted to watch Alexis's perfect life implode as completely as mine had. But another part hesitated, wondering if that kind of scorched earth revenge would bring me any real peace. What I did know was that I wanted her to live in fear for a while. I wanted her to wake up every morning wondering if today was the day her fiancé would receive a message that would destroy his trust in her forever. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to have your future hanging by a thread, with someone else holding the scissors. So I decided to wait, to let her stew in the uncertainty, to give her a taste of the powerlessness I had felt. And then I would decide. A week passed. Then 2. I maintained radio silence with both Alexis and Marcus, though both continued to try to contact me, Marcus with increasingly desperate apologies, Alexis with thinly veiled attempts to determine my intentions. Just wanted to check in and see how you're doing, her latest text read. What she really meant was, have you decided to destroy my life yet? I didn't respond. Let her wonder. Meanwhile, I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to keep my mind occupied. I joined a new gym, changed my hair, bought clothes that made me feel powerful rather than pretty. I was reclaiming myself piece by piece, defining who I was without the 2 people who had been central in my life. At night, though, when the distractions fell away, the betrayal still cut deep. I'd lie awake replaying moments between Alexis and Marcus, searching for signs I'd missed, clues that could have warned me. The time she'd complimented his new haircut a little too enthusiastically, the way he'd asked about her with affected casualness, the subtle change in how they interacted at group gatherings over the past few months. It was all so obvious in retrospect. On the 17th day after the confrontation, my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. This is Todd. We need to talk. Can we meet? My heart stuttered in my chest. How had he gotten my number? What did he know? Had Alexis finally confessed? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. When and where? We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown the following afternoon, neutral territory, away from our usual haunts where we might run into mutual friends. I arrived early, claiming a quiet corner table and ordering a latte that I had no intention of drinking. My stomach was in knots. I'd never been particularly close with Todd. He was Alexis's fiancé, someone I saw at parties and group dinners, polite but not intimate. What could he possibly want to talk about unless... He spotted me as soon as he walked in, offering a tight smile as he made his way to my table. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes and a tightness to his jaw that I'd never seen before. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sitting down without getting a drink. "Of course," I replied carefully. "What's going on?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so similar to Marcus's nervous habit that it made my chest ache. "I think you know why I'm here, Emily." I kept my expression neutral. "Actually, I don't. You asked to meet, and here I am." He studied my face for a moment, then sighed. "Alexis told me everything." A cold wave washed over me. "Everything?" "About her and Marcus. The affair. How you found out." He paused, looking down at his hands. "She's been a wreck for weeks, barely eating, crying all the time. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined..." I couldn't hide my surprise. "She actually told you the truth." He nodded grimly. "After your confrontation, apparently. Said she couldn't live with herself anymore, couldn't keep lying to me." I absorbed this information slowly. Alexis had actually confessed. I hadn't expected that. "I'm sorry," I said finally, because what else could I say? Todd gave a hollow laugh. "Why are you sorry? You didn't do anything wrong. You're as much a victim in this as I am." "Still," I murmured, "it's a terrible thing to go through." "Yes," he agreed, meeting my eyes directly. "It is. Which is why I'm here." I tensed, suddenly wary. "What do you mean?" "Alexis told me you have information from Vegas. She said you're planning to send it to me." So she hadn't told him everything. Just about Marcus, not about the bartender in Vegas or her doubts about their relationship. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. "Did she tell you what this information is?" I asked carefully. He shook his head. "Just that something happened in Vegas that she's ashamed of, and that you have evidence. She's terrified you're going to send it to me out of revenge." "And how do you feel about that?" Todd was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Honestly, I don't know. Part of me thinks I deserve to know everything before I decide whether our relationship can be salvaged. But another part, I prompted when he trailed off. Another part wonders if some truths just cause pain without serving any purpose." He looked up at me, his eyes tired but clear. "That's why I wanted to meet. To ask you directly, what are you planning to do?" I was stunned by his directness, by the quiet dignity with which he was handling this impossible situation. "I don't know," I admitted. "I haven't decided yet." "Because you want to hurt Alexis the way she hurt you," he said. It wasn't a question. "Maybe," I acknowledged. "Or maybe because I think you deserve the whole truth." "Do I?" he asked simply. "If you were in my position, would you want to know everything, even if it meant destroying any chance of moving forward?" I considered this seriously. I think I'd want the choice. I'd want to know that I was making decisions based on reality, not on a sanitized version of the truth. He nodded slowly. "I can understand that. Can I ask you something?" I said suddenly. "Sure. Are you considering staying with her? After what she did with Marcus?" Pain flashed across his face. "I don't know. We've been together for 6 years. We have a life planned. You don't just throw that away without at least considering if it can be fixed. Even knowing she betrayed you? That she's capable of lying to your face for months? People make mistakes," he said quietly, echoing Alexis's words from our confrontation. "Terrible ones sometimes. The question is whether those mistakes define them entirely, or if there's still something worth salvaging." His maturity and thoughtfulness made me feel suddenly small and vindictive. While I'd been plotting revenge, he'd been grappling with the much harder question of forgiveness. "Whatever you decide to do with the Vegas information," he continued, "I want you to know I don't blame you. Not for any of this. Alexis betrayed both of us, and your anger is justified." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, the first I'd cried since the day of discovery. Not for Alexis or Marcus or even myself, but for Todd, this good man caught in the crossfire of betrayal. "I haven't decided what I'm going to do," I told him honestly. "But I appreciate you coming to talk to me like this. It means a lot." He gave me a sad smile. "We're both collateral damage in this mess. Figured we might as well talk directly." As we parted ways outside the coffee shop, he hesitated, then said, "Whatever you decide, Emily." I hope you find peace with it. This kind of betrayal, it can eat you up inside if you let it. I watched him walk away, his words echoing in my mind. He was right. The anger and hurt had been consuming me, becoming the center around which my days revolved. Was that really how I wanted to live? Back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and stared at the folder labeled Vegas, the digital ammunition I'd been planning to use to destroy Alexis's engagement. Todd's words played in my head, alongside the memory of Alexis's tear-stained face as she begged for mercy. What did I really want? Revenge? Justice? Or just to move on with my life, free from the toxicity of betrayal? I closed the laptop without making a decision. I needed more time to think, to determine what course of action would bring me the most peace in the long run. This wasn't just about hurting Alexis anymore. It was about who I wanted to be on the other side of this pain. The answer didn't come quickly or easily. For days, I went back and forth, sometimes convinced I should send everything to Todd, other times leaning toward letting it go and moving on with my life. In the end, the decision crystallized not in a moment of anger, but in a moment of clarity while I was out for a morning run. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and I realized what I needed to do, what would allow me to close this chapter and move forward with my integrity intact. That evening, I opened my laptop again, navigated to the Vegas folder, and began to write an email. 3 weeks had passed since my coffee with Todd when my phone lit up with a text from Alexis. "Can we talk? Please. Just one conversation. I'll come to you wherever you want." I stared at the message for a long time before finally responding. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. My place." Her reply was immediate. "I'll be there." "Thank you." The next evening, when she knocked on my door, I felt oddly calm. The hurricane of emotions that had been raging inside me for weeks had settled into a still, quiet certainty. She looked terrible, thinner than I'd ever seen her, with dark circles under her eyes and a pallor to her skin that spoke of sleepless nights and skipped meals. Gone was the flawlessly put-together Alexis I'd known for a decade, replaced by someone fragile and haunted. "Thank you for seeing me," she said as she stepped inside, her voice hoarse. I gestured to the couch. "Sit down." She perched on the edge of the cushion, hands twisted in her lap. "I don't know where to start." "Why did you want to talk?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She took a deep breath. "I wanted to tell you that the wedding is off. Todd and we're done." I hadn't expected that. "I'm sorry," I said automatically. She gave a bitter laugh. "No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. It's what I deserve." "What happened?" I asked, genuinely curious. She met my eyes directly. "You sent him the Vegas text, didn't you? That's why he finally ended things." I shook my head slowly. "No, Alexis. I didn't send them." Confusion flashed across her face. "You ... Didn't? But Todd said he knew everything. He said there was too much deception, too many betrayals." "Maybe there was," I suggested quietly. "Just not the ones from Vegas." She stared at me, uncomprehending. "I don't understand." I sighed and sat down in the armchair across from her. "I met with Todd about 3 weeks ago. He told me you'd confessed about Marcus." She nodded miserably. "I did. The night after you and I talked. I couldn't keep lying to him. He came to ask me about Vegas," I continued, "to find out what I was planning to do." "And what did you tell him?" she whispered. "I told him I hadn't decided yet, that I was still figuring out what would bring me peace." I paused, watching her face. "We had a good conversation." "He's a good person, Alexis. Better than either of us deserved." Tears filled her eyes. "I know. After I talked with him, I did a lot of thinking. About revenge, about justice, about what would actually help me move forward. And I realized something." "What?" she asked, voice barely audible. "That sending those texts wouldn't undo what you did to me. It wouldn't magically heal my trust issues or erase the betrayal. It would just create more pain, and I'd still be stuck in this cycle of hurt and anger." I leaned forward. "So I made a decision." "What kind of decision?" "I decided not to send the Vegas texts to Todd. Instead, I sent them to you." Her eyes widened. "What? When?" "Check your email. 3 weeks ago, the day after I met with Todd. Subject line, Vegas." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, navigating to her email. I watched as she found the message, opened it, scrolled through the attached screenshots and voice memos. "I don't understand," she said, looking up at me. "Why would you send these to me?" "To remind you of who you really are," I said simply. "To make sure you couldn't bury the truth or rewrite history." "I included a message. Did you read it?" She shook her head, scrolling to the body of the email. I knew what it said by heart. "Alexis, These are all the texts, photos, and voice memos from Vegas that I have. I'm not sending them to Todd. That's not my decision to make. But I am sending them to you as a reminder of the choices you've made and the person you've been. You can't erase this history and you can't change it. All you can do is decide who you want to be moving forward. I won't be a part of that journey. Our friendship is over. Some betrayals can't be undone. But I'm choosing to walk away with my integrity intact rather than letting my pain turn me into someone I don't recognize. Goodbye, Alexis. Emily, tears streamed down her face as she finished reading. I never saw this, she whispered. I stopped checking my email after everything. I've barely been functioning, and yet Todd still ended things, I observed. She nodded, wiping at her tears. He said he couldn't trust me anymore. That even if he could forgive the affair with Marcus, the lying and sneaking around for months showed a fundamental lack of respect that he couldn't get past. She looked up at me. He was right. So what happens now? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. I'm moving out next week. Starting over, I guess. She hesitated. I've been going to therapy, trying to understand why I would hurt the people I care about most. And, have you figured it out? She shook her head. Not yet. Maybe I never will, not completely. But I know I never want to be that person again. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything that had happened, and everything that could have happened, filling the space between us. Why didn't you send the Vegas texts to Todd? She finally asked. You could have destroyed me completely. After what I did, no one would have blamed you. I considered her question carefully. Because it wouldn't have fixed anything. It would have just spread the pain around even more. And because what? Because I didn't want to become the kind of person who destroys others for revenge, I said softly. That's not who I am. Even after everything, I couldn't do that. Fresh tears filled her eyes. You're a better person than I ever was. Maybe, I acknowledged. Or maybe I just made a different choice when faced with pain. Alexis set her phone down and looked at me directly. I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any chance someday that you could forgive me? Not forget or go back to how things were, but just not hate me? The question hung in the air between us. 6 weeks ago, I would have said absolutely not. 2 weeks ago, I might have been unsure. But now, sitting across from the wreckage of the person who had once been my best friend, I found an answer that felt true. I don't hate you, Alexis, I said quietly. I'm angry and hurt and disappointed, and I don't think I'll ever trust you again. But hate requires energy I'm not willing to give this situation anymore. I paused. As for forgiveness, I think that might come with time. Not for your sake, but for mine. She nodded, understanding. Thank you for telling me that. And thank you for not sending those texts to Todd, even though I didn't deserve your mercy. It wasn't mercy, I clarified. It was self-preservation. I didn't want to carry that kind of action with me. As she stood to leave, she hesitated, then asked, Have you heard from Marcus? I shook my head. I blocked him everywhere. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't exist. Good, she said firmly. He doesn't deserve a second of your time. At the door, she turned back one last time. For what it's worth, Emily, I really am sorry. I know those words mean nothing, but they're true. You were the best friend I ever had, and I destroyed that for something that meant nothing. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I didn't have a response to that. Some truths don't need acknowledgement. They simply exist. After she left, I sat alone in my quiet apartment, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. The revenge I'd been planning, the anger I'd been nurturing, it had been exhausting, consuming my energy and attention for weeks. Now, having chosen a different path, I felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, that would take more time, but no longer tethered to the betrayal as the defining factor of my life. I opened my laptop and navigated to the Vegas folder one last time. With a deep breath, I selected all the files and deleted them. Then I emptied the trash, erasing the last digital traces of a friendship that had meant everything and ultimately destroyed itself. It was time to move forward. Time to reclaim my life from the shadow of betrayal. Time to find out who Emily could be on the other side of this pain. My phone buzzed with a text. Not from Alexis or Marcus, but from Todd. Just checking in. Hope you're doing okay. I smiled slightly as I typed my response. Getting better every day. How about you? His reply came quickly. Same. One day at a time? Coffee sometime next week? I considered this for a moment, then wrote back, I'd like that. Sometimes beauty can grow from the ashes of betrayal. Not in the way you expect, and not with the people you planned, but in new, unexpected forms that can only exist because something else was destroyed. I didn't know what the future held. For me, for Todd, for the broken friendship with Alexis that could never be repaired. But for the first time in weeks, I was curious to find out, rather than dreading the next day. That, I decided, was victory enough for now. 3 months after discovering the affair, I sat in a coffee shop downtown, laptop open but forgotten as I stared out the window at the falling autumn leaves. So much had changed since that day in Alexis's kitchen. I'd changed jobs, taking a position at a smaller design firm that valued my creativity more than my previous company. I'd moved to a new apartment across town, away from the memories that lingered in every corner of my old place. I'd even adopted a cat, a cranky orange tabby from the shelter who judged my life choices with narrowed eyes, but slept curled against my side every night. Small changes, perhaps, but significant in their cumulative effect. I was rebuilding, brick by brick. Mind if I join you? I looked up to see Todd standing beside my table, 2 coffee cups in hand. We'd been meeting like this occasionally over the past few months. Not dating, not exactly, but finding comfort in the shared experience of betrayal and healing. Please, I said, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. He set a latte in front of me, oat milk with an extra shot, just how I liked it, and sat down. How's the new place? Good, I replied. Still finding homes for everything, but it feels more like me. He nodded, understanding. That's the goal, right? Finding our way back to ourselves. Our conversations always flowed easily, touching on our parallel journeys of recovery without dwelling too much on the past. We'd both made a conscious choice to focus on moving forward rather than looking back. I ran into Alexis yesterday, he said suddenly, his voice carefully neutral. My heart skipped a beat. How was that? He shrugged. Strange. Brief? She looks better than the last time I saw her. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I hadn't seen Alexis since that final conversation in my old apartment. She'd sent a few texts in the weeks after, tentative check-ins that I'd responded to politely but briefly, but eventually those had tapered off too. She asked about you, Todd added, watching my face. What did she want to know? Just if I'd seen you, how you were doing. He took a sip of his coffee. I told her you were doing well, that you were moving on. Thank you, I said softly. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching people hurry past the window, collars turned up against the autumn chill. I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness, Todd said finally. Not reconciliation, that's different, but the kind of forgiveness that lets you set down the burden of anger. I met his eyes. And? What have you concluded? That it's not a destination but a practice, he said thoughtfully. Some days I can genuinely wish Alexis well on her journey. Other days I'm still angry about what happened. And both of those reactions are valid. His words resonated with my own experience, the unpredictable ebb and flow of healing, the way old hurts could resurface unexpectedly before subsiding again. I think the hardest part, I confessed, is accepting that there will never be a satisfying explanation. No matter what Alexis says about why she betrayed us, it will never make sense, never feel justified. Todd nodded. The story doesn't have a neat ending. We just have to write new stories. Is that what we're doing? I asked, gesturing between us. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. I don't know, but I'm grateful we're doing it together, whatever it is. As we continued talking, moving on to lighter topics, his new consulting project, my latest design challenge, a movie we both wanted to see, I felt a quiet certainty settling in my chest. The betrayal would always be part of my story, a scar that marked a painful chapter. But it wasn't the whole story, and it wouldn't define the chapters yet to be written. Later that evening, as I unpacked the last box in my new apartment, I came across a photo I'd forgotten about. Alexis and me on graduation day, arms around each other, faces alight with excitement for the future. For a moment, my chest tightened with the familiar ache of loss. I didn't tear up the photo or throw it away. Instead, I put it in a drawer, not displayed, not destroyed, just acknowledged as part of a past that couldn't be changed. Then I turned away from the drawer and looked around at my new space, my fresh start, filled with possibilities that had nothing to do with betrayal or revenge or lost friendship. My phone buzzed with a text from Todd. Just wanted to say I enjoyed our coffee today. Dinner next week? I smiled as I typed my response. I'd like that. Name the day? As I set my phone down, I caught my reflection in the window, backlit against the evening sky, my silhouette clear and defined. I looked steady, whole, not unchanged but not broken either. Just moving forward, one step at a time into whatever came next. 6 months after the affair, I'd settled into a new routine. The pain that had once felt like a physical presence, a weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe, had faded to a dull ache that only occasionally flared up. There were still moments when a song or a phrase or even a particular shade of blue would trigger a memory, and I'd feel that familiar tightness in my throat, but those moments were becoming less frequent, less intense. My friendship with Todd had evolved into something I hadn't expected. What had started as occasional coffee meetups to process our shared trauma had gradually transformed into regular dinners, movie nights, and long walks through the city. We were careful to keep things platonic, both of us too raw from betrayal to risk complicating our healing with romance, but there was an undeniable comfort in his company that I'd come to rely on. "You know people think we're dating, right?" Todd said one evening as we shared a bottle of wine on my balcony. The autumn air had a crisp edge to it that hinted at the approaching winter. I laughed softly. "Let them think what they want. We know what this is." He nodded, swirling the wine in his glass thoughtfully. "And what exactly is it, Emily? Sometimes I'm not sure I know myself." The question hung in the air between us, loaded with possibilities neither of us had been brave enough to articulate. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a flutter of something that wasn't quite friendship, wasn't quite attraction, but existed somewhere in the undefined space between. "It's healing," I said finally. Two people helping each other rebuild after the same storm tore through both their lives. His eyes met mine, warm and understanding. "Is that all it is?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down at the screen and felt my body go cold. Marcus. After months of silence, of blocking his number and social media accounts and deliberately taking different routes through the city to avoid any chance encounters, seeing his name on my screen felt like a violation, like he'd breached the walls I'd carefully constructed around my new life. "What's wrong?" Todd asked, noticing the change in my expression. I handed him my phone wordlessly. The message was brief. "Need to talk to you. Important. Please." Todd's jaw tightened. "Are you going to respond?" "No," I said immediately, taking the phone back and deleting the message. He lost the right to my attention 6 months ago. But even as I said it, a nagging curiosity took root. What could be so important that Marcus would reach out after all this time? Had something happened to him? To Alexis? Part of me, a part I wasn't particularly proud of, wanted to know. "Good," Todd said firmly. "He doesn't deserve another minute of your time." I nodded, trying to push thoughts of Marcus from my mind, but the damage was done. The peaceful evening had been disturbed, ripples spreading through the calm I'd worked so hard to create. Later that night, after Todd had gone home, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the deleted message playing on repeat in my head. "Need to talk to you. Important. Please." What did that mean? Why now, after 6 months of silence? Before I could talk myself out of it, I reached for my phone and unblocked Marcus's number. No sooner had I done this than another text came through. "Emily, please. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but something's happened. Something you should know about. Can we meet? Just once. After that, I'll never bother you again." My finger hovered over the screen. The smart choice, the healthy choice, would be to block him again and continue moving forward with my life. But something about his persistence, about the vague urgency of his messages, gnawed at me. "What is it about?" I typed back, already regretting engaging. His response was immediate. "It's about Alexis. She's been lying to you. To both of us. Please, just meet me for coffee. Public place, daytime, your choice of location. 30 minutes of your time, that's all I'm asking." I frowned at the screen. Alexis had been lying? About what? We barely spoke anymore, a text exchange every few weeks at most, polite but distant. What could she possibly be hiding that would matter to me now? After a long internal debate, I replied, "Tomorrow, 1 p.m., the coffee shop on 7th and Park. 30 minutes, not a second more." "Thank you," came his response. "I'll be there." I set my phone down, already questioning my decision. What was I doing? I'd spent months carefully excising Marcus from my life, and now I was voluntarily meeting him? It felt like a betrayal of my own boundaries. I picked up my phone again and called Todd. "Hey," he answered, sounding surprised. "Everything okay?" I did something stupid, I admitted. I'm meeting Marcus for coffee tomorrow. There was a long pause. Why? He says Alexis has been lying about something. Something I should know. I sighed. It's probably nothing. Just another manipulation tactic. But part of me needs to know for sure. Todd was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to come with you? I could sit at a nearby table just in case. The offer touched me deeply. No, but thank you. This is something I need to handle on my own. I just wanted you to know. Be careful, he said softly. Not just physically, but emotionally. People like Marcus, they know how to get under your skin. I know, I replied. 30 minutes in public and then I'm out. No second chances, no drawn-out conversations. After we hung up, I lay back down, staring at the shadows dancing across my ceiling. What was I hoping to gain from this meeting? Closure? Answers? Or was I simply not as over the betrayal as I'd thought? Sleep eluded me that night, my mind racing with possibilities. By the time morning arrived, I'd convinced myself the meeting was a mistake, then talked myself back into going at least a dozen times. I arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes early, choosing a table near the door with a clear exit path. My hands were steady as I ordered a latte, but my heart hammered in my chest, a persistent reminder of the anxiety bubbling just beneath my composed exterior. Marcus arrived 5 minutes early, looking much the same as he had 6 months ago, yet somehow diminished. The confident swagger I'd once found attractive now seemed forced, hollow. He spotted me immediately and approached the table, hesitating before sitting down across from me. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice soft with what sounded like genuine gratitude. I kept my expression neutral. "You said this was important. You have 28 minutes." He nodded, accepting my coldness as his due. "I know you hate me, and you have every right to. What we did, was unforgivable. Is that what you wanted to tell me? Because I already know that part." My voice was sharper than I'd intended, but I couldn't help it. Just being near him brought back the nauseating mix of hurt and anger I'd worked so hard to process. "No," he said quickly. "That's not why I asked to meet." He took a deep breath. "I need to tell you about Alexis. About who she really is." I raised an eyebrow. "And who is she according to you?" "She's not the victim she's pretending to be," he said. "She's been manipulating all of us, you, me, Todd, from the beginning." I felt a flicker of irritation. If you're here to try to justify the affair by painting Alexis as some master manipulator, you can save your breath. You both made choices. Repeatedly. For months. He shook his head. "That's not what I'm saying. Yes, we both made terrible choices. I'm not denying my responsibility. But there's more to the story than you know." Despite myself, I was curious. "What more?" Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice. "The affair didn't start the way you think it did. It wasn't some spontaneous thing that happened one night when we were both weak. Alexis planned it." I scoffed. "Planned it? What does that even mean?" "She pursued me," he said, holding my gaze. "Aggressively. For weeks before anything happened. She'd text me late at night, asking questions about you, about our relationship. She'd accidentally run into me at places she knew I'd be. She'd touch my arm or brush against me when you weren't looking. And you were what? Helpless against her feminine wiles?" The sarcasm dripped from my voice. Poor Marcus seduced against his will. He flinched. "No. Like I said, I'm not denying my part in this. I was weak and selfish and stupid. But Alexis, she had a plan from the start." "What plan? To destroy our friendship and my relationship for fun?" Marcus hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "Not exactly. I think she wanted Todd to find out." This caught me off guard. "Why would she want that?" "Because she was looking for a way out of the engagement," he said quietly. "She'd been having doubts for months. The closer the wedding got, the more panicked she became. But Todd was so good to her, so devoted. She couldn't bring herself to be the bad guy and break his heart directly." I remembered the Vegas texts, Alexis's drunken confessions about feeling trapped by Todd's devotion. Still, this seemed far-fetched. "So your theory is that she had an affair with my boyfriend as some elaborate scheme to sabotage her own engagement? That makes no sense." "It does if you understand Alexis," Marcus insisted. "She's always needed to be the victim in her stories, never the villain. By having an affair that would eventually be discovered, she could end her relationship with Todd while still being the one who was sorry, who made a mistake, who needed forgiveness. It's much easier than admitting you just don't love someone enough to marry them." I shook my head, skeptical but unsettled. "This sounds like a convenient narrative you've constructed to minimize your own culpability." "I thought the same thing at first," he admitted. I told myself I was overthinking it, seeing patterns that weren't there. But then I found this. He pulled out his phone, navigated to his messages, and slid it across the table to me. The screen showed a text conversation with Alexis, dated 2 weeks before I'd discovered the affair. Alexis, I'm going crazy, Marcus. I can't keep living this double life. Sometimes I think it would be easier if we just got caught. Marcus, don't say that. Think about how much it would hurt Emily and Todd. Alexis, I know. I'm a terrible person. But what if this is the only way? Todd would never forgive cheating. It would be over, and I wouldn't have to be the one to end it. I stared at the screen, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. The messages continued, but I couldn't bring myself to read more. I pushed the phone back toward Marcus. Why are you showing me this now? I asked, my voice barely audible. It's been 6 months. He looked down, shame evident in his posture. Because Alexis is trying to get Todd back. She's been telling people that the affair was all my idea, that I manipulated and pursued her when she was vulnerable. She's painted herself as a victim who made one terrible mistake and deserves forgiveness. I thought about Todd, kind, thoughtful Todd who had been so careful with his healing, so deliberate about moving forward. And you think Todd is falling for it? Marcus shrugged. I don't know. But I heard from a mutual friend that they've been talking again, meeting for coffee to process what happened. I thought you should know. For Todd's sake, if nothing else. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this new information. Could Alexis really have been so calculating? The messages certainly suggested she'd been actively looking for an escape from her engagement. But did that change anything about what had happened between her and Marcus? About her betrayal of our friendship? Even if what you're saying is true, I said slowly, it doesn't change the fact that you chose to have an affair with my best friend. You lied to my face for months. You betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way possible. I know, he said quietly, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Emily. I don't deserve it. I just thought you deserved to know the whole truth. I checked my watch. Your 30 minutes are up. He nodded, standing slowly. Thank you for listening. Whatever you decide to do with this information is up to you. He hesitated. For what it's worth, I am truly sorry. Not just for the affair, but for not being strong enough to say no to Alexis, for not considering what it would do to you. You deserved so much better. I didn't respond, just watched as he walked out of the coffee shop. Only when he was gone did I allow myself to exhale, releasing the tension I'd been holding in my body throughout our conversation. My mind raced with questions and doubts. Was Marcus telling the truth about Alexis's motivations? Or was this just another manipulation, another lie from someone who had already proven he couldn't be trusted? And if it was true, what did it change? Did Alexis's potential premeditation make her betrayal worse than I'd already believed it to be? Did it matter why she'd done it, when the end result was the same, a shattered friendship and broken trust? Most importantly, what, if anything, should I tell Todd? I paid for my barely touched latte and left the coffee shop, needing fresh air and space to think. I walked aimlessly through the city streets, turning Marcus's revelations over in my mind. Part of me wanted to dismiss everything he'd said as the desperate lies of a man trying to deflect blame. But those texts, they had seemed genuine. And they aligned with what I already knew about Alexis from the Vegas messages, her doubts about Todd, her feeling of being trapped in the relationship. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd made a decision. I called Todd. How did it go? He asked as soon as he picked up. Complicated, I replied. Are you free tonight? I think we need to talk in person. That doesn't sound good, he said, concern evident in his voice. Want to come over for dinner? I can cook. That would be great. Around 7? Perfect. And Emily? Whatever Marcus said, remember who it's coming from. I smiled despite the turmoil in my mind. I know. See you at 7. After hanging up, I spent the next few hours trying to distract myself with work, but my concentration was shot. I kept coming back to the same question. What was the right thing to do? Tell Todd everything Marcus had shared, potentially reopening wounds that were finally starting to heal? Or keep it to myself, potentially allowing him to be manipulated by Alexis if Marcus was telling the truth? By the time I arrived at Todd's apartment that evening, I still wasn't sure what I was going to say. He greeted me with a warm hug and the scent of garlic and herbs wafting from his kitchen. Hope you're hungry, he said, leading me inside. I might have gone overboard with the pasta. Starving. I lied. my appetite non-existent under the weight of the decision I was trying to make. We made small talk as he finished preparing dinner, safe topics like work and the latest show we'd both been watching. But as we sat down to eat, the avoidance felt wrong, dishonest. "So," Todd said, setting down his fork, "what did Marcus want?" I took a deep breath. He wanted to tell me about Alexis. About the affair. His version of events. Todd nodded, his expression carefully neutral. And what was his version? I hesitated, then decided the direct approach was best. He claims that Alexis pursued him deliberately. That she was looking for a way out of your engagement and thought getting caught cheating would be easier than breaking up with you directly. Todd's face remained impassive, but I noticed his knuckles whitening as he gripped his fork more tightly. Did he have any evidence for this theory? He showed me some texts, I admitted. Messages from Alexis suggesting that she thought getting caught might be the easiest way to end your relationship. Todd was quiet for a long moment, processing. "And you believe him?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Marcus is hardly a reliable source, but the texts seemed genuine, and they align with some things I already knew about Alexis's doubts regarding your relationship. "What things?" Todd asked sharply. I winced, realizing I'd revealed more than I'd intended. Just things she said in Vegas. About feeling trapped sometimes, about having uncertainties about the wedding. "I see." Todd set down his fork and pushed his plate away, his appetite seemingly gone as well. "Why are you telling me this, Emily?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what's your purpose in sharing this information? What are you hoping to accomplish?" I stared at him, taken aback by his directness. I thought you deserved to know. Especially if you're considering reconciling with Alexis." His eyes narrowed slightly. "And how did you know I was considering that?" "Marcus mentioned you two have been meeting for coffee," I said, suddenly feeling like I was on shaky ground. "To process what happened." Todd laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And you believe that too? Just took his word for it?" I faltered, realizing how it must sound. I didn't know if it was true. That's why I wanted to talk to you directly. "Emily," Todd said, his voice gentler now, "I haven't spoken to Alexis in nearly 2 months. The last time I saw her was when I ran into her at the grocery store, which I told you about. There have been no coffee meetings, no processing sessions, no reconciliation attempts." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by embarrassment. "So Marcus was lying about that part?" "It seems so," Todd confirmed. "Which makes me wonder what else he might have been lying about." "The text seemed real," I insisted, though doubt was creeping in. "But you're right, I should have been more skeptical." Todd reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm not upset that you told me. I appreciate your honesty, actually. But I have to ask, are you really concerned about me potentially reconciling with Alexis? Or is there something else going on here?" I pulled my hand away, uncomfortable with his perceptiveness. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said carefully, "that sometimes when we've been deeply hurt by someone, we need to believe they're even worse than we originally thought. It helps justify our pain, our anger. It makes the story cleaner, simpler. You think I want Alexis to be some calculating villain because it's easier than accepting that my best friend just betrayed me?" I asked, an edge creeping into my voice. "I think," Todd said, "that healing isn't linear. That sometimes we think we're moving forward when we're actually circling back to old pain. And that's okay. It's normal." I stood up abruptly, needing space. This isn't about me not healing properly. This is about Marcus showing me concrete evidence that Alexis might have been even more manipulative than we thought. Todd remained seated, his expression calm. "Evidence from a man who lied to your face for months? A man who has every reason to want to shift blame away from himself. So you think it's all lies? That Alexis just happened to fall into an affair with my boyfriend with no ulterior motives whatsoever?" "I don't know," Todd admitted. "And honestly, Emily, I'm not sure it matters anymore. Does it change what happened? Does it make the betrayal any less real?" His words echoed my own earlier thoughts, and I felt the fight drain out of me. I sank back into my chair. "No," I said quietly. "I guess it doesn't." We sat in silence for a moment, the tension slowly dissipating. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "You're right. I shouldn't have let Marcus get to me like this. It's just seeing him again, hearing him talk about Alexis. It brought everything back." Todd's expression softened. "Of course it did. That's natural. But maybe this is a sign that you need to be more protective of your peace. Meeting with Marcus, entertaining his version of events, it's reopening wounds that were starting to heal." I nodded, acknowledging the truth in his words. "You're pretty wise, you know that?" He smiled. "Not wise, Just someone who's been through the same thing and made plenty of his own mistakes along the way. As the evening continued, we managed to salvage dinner and steer the conversation toward lighter topics. But something had shifted between us, a new awareness, a deeper understanding of the work we still had to do, individually and perhaps together. When I left Todd's apartment that night, I felt both exhausted and oddly lighter, as if naming the lingering pain had somehow diminished its power. I'd allowed Marcus to temporarily disrupt my healing, but I wouldn't make that mistake again. I deleted his number from my phone and reblocked him on every platform. Whatever his motivations for reaching out, whether genuine remorse or manipulative blame-shifting, he had no place in my life moving forward. As for Alexis, the questions Marcus had raised would probably never be fully answered. Had she deliberately pursued an affair as an escape strategy? Or had she simply made a series of selfish, harmful choices without a master plan? In the end, it didn't really matter. The result was the same: broken trust, shattered friendship, pain that had altered the course of multiple lives. What mattered now was what I chose to do with that pain. Let it consume me, keep me looking backward at betrayal, or use it as a foundation for something new, something stronger, something truer to who I wanted to be. The answer seemed clearer than ever as I walked home under a sky full of stars, each one a distant point of light in the darkness. Winter descended on the city with unusual ferocity that year. By December, snow blanketed the streets, transforming the urban landscape into something softer, quieter, more forgiving. I'd always loved winter, the way it seemed to push pause on the world, creating space for reflection and renewal. In the 2 months since my ill-advised meeting with Marcus, I'd recommitted to my healing journey with renewed purpose. I'd started seeing a therapist weekly, joined a support group for people recovering from betrayal trauma, and thrown myself into creative projects that fed my soul rather than just paying my bills. And then there was Todd. What had started as friendship born from shared pain had evolved into something neither of us had been looking for, but both of us welcomed. We'd taken things achingly slowly, both terrified of misplacing trust again, both careful with each other's still healing hearts. But by the time the first snow fell, we'd acknowledged that what we felt for each other was more than friendship. "It's weird, isn't it?" I said one evening as we sat by the fireplace in his apartment, watching the snow fall outside the window. "That something good could come from something so painful?" Todd tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch gentle. "Maybe it's not weird at all. Maybe it's just life, beauty from ashes and all that." I leaned my head against his shoulder, content in a way I hadn't thought possible 6 months earlier. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they hadn't betrayed us? If we'd just continued in our separate lives, never knowing each other beyond occasional social gatherings? Sometimes, he admitted, but then I think about how much I've grown through the pain, how much clearer I am now about what I want, what I deserve. I wouldn't wish the betrayal on anyone, but I can't regret where it led me. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The betrayal had broken me open, forced me to confront insecurities and patterns I might have otherwise ignored for years. It had been a brutal awakening, but an awakening nonetheless. "I got an invitation today," I said after a comfortable silence, "to Melissa's New Year's Eve party." Todd tensed slightly beside me. "Alexis will be there." "Probably," I agreed. We hadn't spoken her name often in recent months, a mutual, unspoken agreement to focus on the present rather than the past. "Are you going to go?" he asked carefully. I'd been asking myself the same question all day. The old Emily would have avoided the party at all costs, unwilling to risk an uncomfortable encounter. But I wasn't that person anymore. "I think I want to," I said slowly. Not to confront her or create drama, just to reclaim my social life, to show myself that she doesn't have power over me anymore. Todd nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that. Do you want me to come with you?" The question carried weight beyond the simple invitation. We hadn't appeared together socially in our overlapping friend groups yet. Going to this party as a couple would make a statement, one we'd both need to be ready for. "Only if you want to," I replied. "I don't want to pressure you into an uncomfortable situation." He turned to face me fully, his eyes serious. "Emily, there's nowhere I'd rather be than by your side. If you're ready for people to know about us, I'm more than ready." The certainty in his voice made my heart swell. "Then yes, I'd love for you to come with me." He leaned in and kissed me, soft and sweet and full of promise. When we separated, he had a mischievous glint in his eye. "Plus, can you imagine the looks on people's faces when we walk in together? Worth the price of admission alone." I laughed, grateful for his ability to inject humor into a potentially tense situation. True, though I'm not in it for the drama. Of course not, he agreed. But a little karmic justice never hurt anyone. As the date of the party approached, I experienced moments of doubt. Was I really ready to face Alexis? To navigate the inevitable awkwardness and gossip that would follow? To answer the invasive questions about how Todd and I had gotten together? But beneath the anxiety was a steady current of determination. I refused to let fear dictate my choices anymore. I refused to let Alexis's presence, or the ghost of our friendship, control which events I attended, which friends I maintained relationships with. The night of the party arrived with a fresh blanket of snow and temperatures cold enough to justify my most glamorous winter coat. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a deep emerald dress that made my eyes pop, elegant but not trying too hard. I wanted to look like someone who had moved on with her life, because I had. Todd picked me up at 8, handsome in a charcoal sweater and dark jeans, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. "You look beautiful," he said, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I replied, linking my arm through his. "Ready for this?" He squeezed my hand. "More than ready." The party was in full swing when we arrived, Melissa's apartment transformed with twinkling lights and metallic decorations. Music pulsed through the crowded space, and the air was warm with bodies and conversation. Several heads turned as we entered, a ripple of recognition and surprise moving through the room. Melissa spotted us immediately, her eyes widening before her face split into a genuine smile. She hurried over, champagne flute in hand. "Emily! Todd!" "I'm so glad you both came," she exclaimed, giving me a tight hug before turning to Todd. "And together. This is unexpected but wonderful." I smiled, appreciating her enthusiasm. "Thanks for inviting us. Your place looks amazing." "Oh, this old thing?" she joked, gesturing around her impeccably decorated apartment. "Just threw it together last minute." She leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "Just so you know, she's here. In the kitchen last I saw. If you want to avoid—" "It's fine," I interrupted gently. "Really, we're all adults. I'm sure we can be in the same room for one night." Melissa looked relieved. "You're handling this much better than I would. Let me get you both drinks. Open bar is in the corner. Help yourselves to everything." As she disappeared into the crowd, Todd gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You okay?" I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Surprisingly, yes. Let's get those drinks." We made our way through the party, stopping to chat with friends and acquaintances, many of whom did double takes when they realized we were together. The questions came, of course, but we'd prepared simple answers. Yes, we were dating. It was relatively new. Yes, we were happy. No, we didn't want to discuss the past. I was at the bar getting a refill when I felt it. That peculiar sixth sense that tells you when someone significant has entered your orbit. I turned slowly, and there she was. Alexis stood just a few feet away, a glass of white wine clutched in her hand, her eyes wide with surprise. She looked different than the last time I'd seen her. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, her style more subdued. But it was her expression that struck me most. Uncertainty mixed with something that looked almost like fear. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the noise of the party fading into the background. Then, to my surprise, she spoke. "Hi, Emily." Her voice was soft, hesitant, so different from the confident Alexis I'd known for a decade. I nodded in acknowledgement. "Alexis." She glanced around nervously. "I didn't expect to see you here. Melissa and I have been friends for years." I replied, my voice steady. "Why wouldn't I be here?" She looked down at her glass. "I just thought, after everything, you might avoid places where I'd be. I'm not organizing my social calendar around you anymore," I said, not unkindly but with finality. "That part of my life is over." She flinched slightly at my words but nodded. "That's fair." She hesitated, then added, "You look good." "Happy." "I am," I said simply. An awkward silence stretched between us, years of shared history and months of pain creating a gulf that small talk couldn't begin to bridge. "I heard a rumor," she finally said, her voice barely audible over the music, "about you and Todd." I didn't confirm or deny, just waited to see where she was going with this. Is it serious?" she asked, something vulnerable in her eyes. I considered deflecting, telling her it was none of her business. But the truth was, I didn't feel the need to shield this part of my life from her anymore. "Yes," I said. "It is." She nodded slowly, absorbing this. "I'm glad," she said, surprising me. "You both deserve to be happy. After what I did—" "Alexis, I interrupted, not wanting to get drawn into a conversation about the past. I appreciate that. But I didn't come here tonight to rehash old wounds or seek your blessing. Todd and I are good. That's all that matters. Her face fell slightly, but she recovered quickly. Of course. I'm sorry. She took a step back. I'll let you get back to the party. As she turned to leave, something compelled me to speak again. Alexis? She looked back, hope flickering across her face. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said genuinely, whatever that is. Tears sprang to her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. Thank you, she whispered. I hope I do too. I watched her disappear into the crowd, a strange sense of closure settling over me. There was no dramatic confrontation, no tearful reconciliation, no final reckoning, just two people who had once meant everything to each other, acknowledging that that chapter was definitively closed. When I found Todd again, he was deep in conversation with a mutual friend, but immediately sensed my mood. Everything okay? He asked, slipping an arm around my waist. I just talked to Alexis, I said quietly. His body tensed. And. Nothing really. It was fine. Civil. Brief. He studied my face carefully. How do you feel? I considered the question, taking stock of my emotional state. Free, I said finally. Like I've set down a heavy weight I didn't even realize I was still carrying. He kissed my temple gently. I'm proud of you. We stayed at the party until midnight, counting down the final seconds of the year with a room full of friends. As the clock struck 12, Todd pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. New year, new beginning, he murmured. No more looking back. I agreed, and kissed him as confetti rained down around us. Later, as we walked home through the snow-covered streets, hand in hand under a sky bright with stars, I felt a profound sense of peace. Not just about the confrontation with Alexis, but about everything that had led me to this moment. The betrayal had nearly broken me. It had shattered my trust, upended my world, forced me to question everything I thought I knew about friendship and love. But standing here now, with Todd's hand warm in mine and my heart full in a way I'd never experienced before, I couldn't regret the path that had brought me here. Some lessons can only be learned through pain. Some strengths can only be discovered when everything else has been stripped away. Some loves can only be found after you've survived the unthinkable. What are you thinking about? Todd asked, noticing my contemplative silence. Just how strange life is, I replied. How the thing you think will destroy you can sometimes be the very thing that saves you in the end. He stopped walking and turned to face me, snowflakes catching in his eyelashes. You saved yourself, Emily. I was just lucky enough to be standing nearby when you did. In that moment, with snow falling softly around us and a new year stretching out before us, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made it through the darkest part. The betrayal would always be part of my story, a scar that had changed the shape of my life, but it no longer defined me. I had survived. I had healed. I had forgiven, not for the sake of those who had hurt me, but for my own freedom. And most importantly, I had found a love that was honest and true and built on mutual respect rather than deception. Take me home, I said softly, looping my arms around his neck. Your place or mine? He asked with a smile. Doesn't matter, I replied. Home is wherever we are together. As we continued our walk through the silent, snow-covered streets, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the devastating discovery in Alexis's kitchen to this moment of pure contentment. It hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been days of blinding rage and nights of suffocating grief. There had been moments when moving forward seemed impossible, when the weight of betrayal threatened to crush me completely. But here I was, not just surviving, but thriving. Here I was, loving again despite the risk. Here I was, finally understanding that sometimes the most painful endings make way for the most beautiful beginnings. And in that understanding was a peace I had never known before, a peace born not from the absence of pain, but from its transformation into something stronger, wiser, and infinitely more valuable. The betrayal text from Vegas never made it to Todd. Instead, it became the catalyst for a different kind of message, one of hope, of resilience, of the human heart's remarkable capacity to heal and love again, even after the deepest wound. As I looked up at the star-filled sky, I silently thanked the universe for bringing me through the storm to this calm harbor, for teaching me that even in our darkest moments, light is always waiting to break through, for showing me that sometimes the most devastating betrayals can lead to the most unexpected blessings. And as I felt Todd's hand tighten around mine, I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't change a thing about the path that had led me here, to this moment, this person, this love that was all the more precious because I had nearly lost the ability to believe in it at all. This was my revenge in the end, not sending those texts, not destroying Alexis's life, but building something beautiful from the ruins of betrayal. Living well, loving deeply, finding joy where there had been only pain. It was the sweetest victory I could have imagined, and it was only just beginning.